How did this man's bare bottom help Britain win World War I?
He looks really different with his suit off, doesn't he? Like, you wouldn't even know that was him.
Give us a clue about the man. Did something go into his bottom or come out of it?
Well... The man is called William Lawrence Bragg. He was a physicist. He was a Nobel laureate. In fact, he remains the youngest recipient of the Nobel Prize. He received it in 1915, along with his father, his famous physicist. In 1915, he was serving as a subaltern in Flanders, trying to find out ways to use sound to locate enemy artillery. So one day, he's sitting on the latrine at the house where he was billeted, a little tight little closet with no window at all, and he'd shut the door, and so that there was no other opening to the outside world apart from the one that he was sitting on. And he noticed that when there was gunfire nearby, his backside momentarily lifted off the seat. Even when he didn't really hear the explosion, there was a sort of a thing like this. And meanwhile, another physicist he was working with, a man called William Tucker, was billeted in a tar paper hut, and he noticed that by his cot there were just a couple of little holes, and even on a day when there was no wind, little puffs of air were blowing through. And they compared notes, the two, and the one from the loo and one from these two little holes, and they deduced that this was the result of inaudible, low-frequency sounds of artillery. And they set about devising detectors, and by 1917 it was so advanced that the Allies had a really devastating advantage in locating and targeting enemy guns. And it all came about because his backside lifted off the lavatory.
This is maybe the most inspiring story I've ever heard.
About a lavatory?
About a men's toilet and holes in a wall. Normally, these end super differently.
Yeah.
Normally, it's and they had to shut down that garage. and did they have to use his specific arse on all of
No,
this?
I don't.
You didn't have to go around the whole... there.
But that's how he discovered it. There are still 40,000 outside lavatories in the UK.
I'm surprised they've not all been turned into serial cafes or something. That's the sort of thing that people keep doing now, turning toilets into bars.
Yeah, there's one not far from here.
Yeah?
It's a toilet.
Turned into a bar?
It's called the toilet, I think.
I think he said that's the one.
Where you go to the loo, God knows. You can go up the street and do it up the side of a pub, like...
There used to be a thing when people were peeing up the sides of buildings. Boys, let's be honest, boys peeing outside buildings.
And talented girls.
Yeah, and very talented girls. Lots of London buildings had special tilted metal bars so that if somebody did pee against it, the pee would splash back on the person's shoes. The most southerly public loo in Britain is on the island of the Minkies. Here's a picture of it. It says, this toilet has the distinction of being the most southern building in the British Isles. Please use with care, as the nearest alternative is in Jersey, which is 11 miles away.
It looks like those rocks are leaning against the toilet.
It looks like they're queuing up, doesn't it?
It does look like a queue, doesn't it? They've solidified waiting.
The colonels-in-chief of the Royal Dragoons and the 1st King's Dragoon Guards failed to turn up for duty at the start of the First World War.
They were entwined in an embrace. Only now can we reveal the truth.
It was one of those embarrassing things about...
Oh, I know.
Yes, go on.
Because it was Kaiser Bill.
Yes. Kaiser Bill was, in fact, the colonel-in-chief of the Royal Dragoons, and Franz Joseph the Habsburgs was the colonel-in-chief of the King's Dragoons. So
That's a security risk.
It was a bit, wasn't it? But we carried on doing this.
It turned out that Osama bin Laden was actually, an admiral of the fleet. That would, that would have been a nightmare.
We appointed Emperor Hirohito a field marshal in 1930, so we carried on doing this. So obviously there was a bit of embarrassment to begin with when they had to go to war with their own colonel-in-chief. It was eventually sorted out, and we pretty much spanked their botties. We pretty much did.
After only 4 years of carnage.
Yes, that's right.
Who is that there on the screen?
Tony Robinson. And there is a Tony Robinson, Baldrick, who's about to come on. But in the First World War, as you probably know and we've covered before, there was a Christmas football truce.
Yes.
But what happened later, in 1915, was that because football had been banned at Christmas Day, a soldier smuggled into the trench a football. It was deflated so that no one would spot it, and then he blew it up before the Battle of Loos. And in the morning, when the whistle blew to commence the offensive, he threw it out of the trench, shouting, "Play up, London Irish," because it was from the London Irish Regiment, which I'm sure you'll be aware of.
Yeah,
Great regiment.
And they found the football when they got to the German trench. They kept it. And it so happens a member of that London Irish happens to be called Tony Robinson, and is therefore always called Baldrick by his fellows. And he has brought that football along today. Christmas came Darling, take that man's name and address.
When they say
This really is turning the football.
It is indeed just the football.
And where is it kept?
It's kept in the museum, which is now down in Camberwell at the London Irish Rifles.
Is it called the London Irish Regiment or the London Regiment?
We're D Company London Irish Rifles of the London Regiment.
Right, D Company. And it's still an active regiment in the British Army, and we have some of your fellow soldiers over here. If you'd like to stand up, here they are. Fabulous to see you, boys. They're all recently back from Helmand province in Afghanistan.
This is a very historic year for Irish soldiers.
Tell me why.
Well, last May, all Irish soldiers who deserted the Irish Army...
have been...
I haven't finished
sorry,
all soldiers who deserted the Irish Army in both First World War and Second World War periods and joined the British Army to fight for the British Army were granted a pardon.
That is extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it's too late now, I'm dead.
Almost all of them. Almost all of them are dead. But it was true, wasn't it, that if you were Irish and anti-fascist, say,
yes,
and you wanted to fight for the Allies against Germany, and so you joined the British Army, it was considered by the Irish government that you were a traitor.
Correct.
You got no pension, you couldn't work for the government.
No. And you could barely go home.
And yeah.
Indeed.
But thank you very much, and please sit down. Members of D Company, thank you so much. Anyway, Baldrick.
Sir.
I've never seen you looking better. You're still an absolute disaster of a human being. Thank you so much for bringing me lunch. I'm not very hungry. You can take it away.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Wonderful. Tony Robinson. So, yeah, that football you've just seen was kicked right across no man's land by Rifleman Frank Edwards and the London Irish in 1915.
1 million British horses were sent to the First World War front. What happened to the ones that survived?
They settled in the south of France, opened a caravan park.
Of course, they couldn't learn the language, ended up moving back.
Ah, well, that's what they didn't do, is move back.
Did the French eat them?
Well, lots of people ate them. Probably they were turned into food or they were rendered into products. Yeah, the point is, 1 million horses is a heck of a lot, but almost none got made it back home. They thought...
some did, because in War Horse he did.
Yes.
He came back. He did come back.
1 million horses went to the First World War?
From Britain, yeah.
That's extraordinary. I mean, if you think about just the logistics of getting 1 million horses across the Channel, I mean, they're not all David Williams.
No, exactly. According to Michael Morpurgo, who wrote that book, War Horse, you just mentioned, 8 to 10 million horses died in the First World War. And they didn't have a nice time of it, even if they did survive, because they thought they'd be diseased when they came back as well, so they just didn't want them. So it was a very sad chapter in our story.
Yeah.
It's a bummer, isn't it? I've silenced you.
It's like when they play the Black Beauty music, I just start crying. Well, you know the bit where Ginger dies? It's really, really sad.
You know what, they call him Ginger.
So I would have that music at my funeral, definitely. Black Beauty music.
It's a deal.
I'll arrange it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll make sure it happens.
Good.
So how fast is that coffin going to be moving? Quite a lick by the sounds of it.
One of the most popular ones to have now with the coffin going on is the countdown theme. Like that.
It is bizarre the way people go crazy for horses, though. I remember being, like, in primary school. It was the first time I saw anyone... And it did a really weird thing. It really stuck in my head. And there was a little girl in our primary school class. We were, like, 6 years old. And she was just in floods of tears. Just crying, bawling her eyes out. And we kind of went, what's the matter? And she went, I just love horses so much.
Oh, is that how you were?
I don't see why that's strange. had to write one of those, you know, they sometimes ask you to write things for, you know, your first love. Genuinely, my first love was Frank, and he was a pony. Who wasn't very handsome. He had brown ears and a spotty neck and a really bad sweet itch, so his mane just kind of stood up in sections. And my mother always said, if you could love Frank, then everything in the world would always be beautiful, because you thought he was beautiful. And I did.
Oh, that's so touching.
He was lovely. He understood me.
There's a whole...
He did understand me.
Why little boys don't care about ponies? I know families who move because the girl, you know, for the sake of, you know, having more space so that maybe they can get a horse.
Well, we were emotionally mature a little earlier.
Yeah.
About 50 years earlier.
I would never move for a child's hobby. You know, I can see it like child go, but I love ponies. Yeah, well, I like this house, my own house. When you pay for the mortgage, you can stick a pony in every room, right?
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
All right, what are you asking?
Not your dad, all right?
All right. Thank you. So, yes, the fact is very few horses sadly made it home from the front. If they weren't killed in action, they were likely to be fed to prisoners or turned into fertiliser.
Why did the colonels-in-chief of the Royal Dragoons and the 1st King's Dragoon Guards fail to turn up for duty at the start of the First World War?
They were entwined in an embrace. Only now can we reveal the truth.
It was one of those embarrassing things about...
Oh, I know.
Yes, go on.
Because it was Kaiser Bill.
Yes. Kaiser Bill was, in fact, the Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Dragoons, and Franz Joseph de Habsburgs was the Colonel-in-Chief of the King's Dragoons. So
that's a security risk.
It was a bit, wasn't it? But we carried on doing this.
If it turned out that Osama bin Laden was actually, an admiral of the fleet, that would, that would have been a nightmare.
We appointed Emperor Hirohito a field marshal in 1930, so we carried on doing this. So obviously there was a bit of embarrassment to begin with when they had to go to war with their own colonel-in-chief. It was eventually sorted out, and we pretty much spanked their botties. We pretty much did.
After only 4 years of carnage.
Yes, that's right.
Why was Sir Billy Butlin such a little devil?
Holiday camps.
Butlin's holiday camps? Yeah. Minehead, Scarborough, Filey...
Skegness.
Yep.
Well, the chalet's little.
So, no, but Billy Butlin himself...
Was he tiny?
He was. And if you think about the age he is, you might be able to work this out.
Second World War?
No.
First World War.
First World War. That's the generation he was. And in the First World War, they had something to make people fight, which was called...
Bromide.
No. It was a law.
Oh, because...
Conscription, yes. But one of the things that could get you out of being conscripted was that if you were...
Tiny.
If you were small.
Did he pretend to be bigger to...
No, he, as it were, fell under a particular desperation that the British Army...
Did they start a short army?
Yes, they literally did. Lord Derby, the Earl of Derby, said, now, hang on, there are a whole load of short people, as it were, getting under the wire. And all these tall people are fighting and dying for us. We want more people to die for us. There simply aren't enough people dying. And all these short people are living. So we're going to have a short brigade. And they were known as the Bantams, the Bantam Brigade. And they were... I know.
Presumably quite good you could play on the opposition's or, the opposing army's sense of perspective.
Yeah.
Some way you're like...
Those soldiers are really far away.
They have edges.
These were men under 5'3", and Billy Butlin was one of them. They became known as the Devils, in fact, the Devil's Dwarfs, because they were so... the reputation for brawling and mischief. They were very, very aggressive. Here they are being inspected by a splendid man in a moustache. And
German shin injuries up 75%. Our legs are being shot away from us. We do not know why.
Do you think they should have just put them on each other's shoulders in a long coat?
Oh, yeah. The most famous of them was called Henry Thridgold, who was only 4'9", and he was believed to be the shortest soldier ever to have served in the British Army. There he is next to quite a tall Scottish soldier. But that's a short chap, but chirpy and cheerful and ready to lay down his life for our country.
I hope you didn't shake hands with him.
Hey, now.
That's given my husband and I a whole new avenue for bedroom role play.
You mean be Henry, and I'll be a Scots Guard.
Well, there you are. So next time you go on a Butlins holiday, you can say, well, thank you, Billy, for putting your life at risk, despite the fact that you weren't as tall as most soldiers.
And he survived.
He survived in order to create these holiday camps. Yeah.
With tiny beds.
With...